Right. So we're going to get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Snowball Wealth event, where we're going to cover the basics around crypto and Web3. This session is brought to you by Snowball. We're a platform to help you tackle debt and start investing. You can actually now download our mobile app where you can start tracking your net worth and also join savings challenges. I want to introduce our speaker today, Cheryl Campos. She's the head of venture growth and partnerships at Republic. She's also active in ensuring that underrepresented communities are aware of different avenues for wealth building. And this fireside chat will give you an overview of how cryptocurrencies work, how they play into our current financial system, and how they can be used as a tool for personal growth and wealth building. And we'll also give a brief overview of Web3. So Cheryl has a quick presentation, and then we'll get into the questions and Q&A. And I know a lot of you submitted questions. There's a lot of questions, so we may not be able to cover them all today, but maybe there'll be a part 2 if there's enough interest. And with that, I will hand it over to Cheryl. I think you're muted. Yeah.
Hey everyone, sorry about that. I don't know what you saw, but can you see my screen right now or no?
No, not yet.
Okay, I just realized I have a bunch of tabs open for everything. So 1 second, and I also will turn on my Slack because I just realized I'm getting messages. So anyway.
Awesome, well, we're excited to have you here.
Thank you. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Perfect.
Great.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, everyone. I'm Cheryl. I am the head of venture growth and partnerships at Republic. I'm also a scout at Lightspeed, an investment part of the community fund, and I'm also a community builder. So I co-founded VC Familia, which is the largest Latinx venture investor group, and I also am a model actress. So I do a lot of things, but what all of these things have in common is the fact that I really am all for building generational wealth, not just for my family, but for others, and especially women and underrepresented communities, because when we all rise together, we can do so much for the world. So I'm really, really excited to be here today. So thank you, Tanya, for inviting me. Let's start with the big picture here around the evolution of the web as we know it, right? We were all, or hopefully we remember, the Internet Explorer, Yahoo, Netscape. This was Web 1, which is essentially read only. And you're basically kind of just digesting content and it's static. So you can't really interact with it. It was just more for your edification that information was everywhere. And that was kind of the democratization of information through the internet. That was Web 1.0. Now, if you go to the next step with Web 2, which is kind of where we are today, you have Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, which is dynamic. You can create content, you could interact with others, and you're able to then be a part of this larger Web 2 community. However, where we're going right now is Web 3, where essentially it's kind of like the read, write, own economy. Think about it as you actually having ownership in the things that you interact with. And so the internet itself is really shared online and governed by all of us, rather than owned by centralized entities like Google, Amazon, these entire conglomerates that really own a lot of our information. And, why don't we own that ourselves? Why are they all getting the cuts for advertising and all of that? So we will get rewarded by interacting with these new apps and everything that's coming out in Web3. So that's kind of where we're going. And so I just really want to kind of take a step back with the big picture. For those of you who are a little bit less familiar with the blockchain, I'm actually put 4 definitions of the blockchain here, but I kind of just highlighted one. And this slide basically is to show that there's a lot of jargon in Web3, in crypto. We'll talk about ledger, node, like all these other things that sound daunting, but you have to just get comfortable with researching and learning more about each of the things that you come across in Web3 and crypto, because otherwise, that's kind of how they want to weed people out, is by if people are scared of these terms that are being used in new ways. And so I really want you to come out with this. If anything that you've learned here is that it's unnecessarily full of jargon and you have to get comfortable with the unknown here and keep going. So for blockchain, it's a distributed database that is shared among the nodes of a network. So as this database is shared, all of these transactions that happen, they go into the nodes of the network and then are verified, and then they are redistributed to the nodes of the network. So in terms of the blockchain, what you really need to know here is that it's immutable. So essentially, because there are several computers and hardware with the ledger, or we call record keeping system or database, whatever you want to call it, because all these nodes have some sort of understanding of where the database is and what records have already been in place, it's actually immutable. So they will actually detect whether or not there's fraud or other malicious activity. So that's the beauty of the blockchain, is that one, it can't be changed. Two, is that it's transparent. So anyone can really view these transactions because they're public. And therefore, for example, hopefully blockchain will be applied to the food sector, but you'll be able to track where your food comes from, where it's gone in transportation space. There's all these different ways that blockchain can be affect our lives. So that's the beauty of it, is that's transparent. And last but not least, it's decentralized. As I mentioned, because it relies on the centralized network of users to validate these transactions that happen on the blockchain, there's, that means that no one central person can shut this down or can really, stop this from happening. And so the reason why I wanted to mention that part is because the reason why there's a different crypto, which by the way lives on the blockchain, there are different types of blockchain. That's why there's different types of crypto. And so that's why I wanted to show here, for example, there's Bitcoin and Bitcoin. The difference here is the fact that there's one capital B and one lowercase b, but essentially blockchain technology was surfaced in 2009 by Satoshi Nakamoto, which nobody knows who he is or she or a group, but they essentially invented Bitcoin. And there's two types of Bitcoin. There's Bitcoin, the actual blockchain, which is the first major application of this peer-to-peer network technology. And then there's the currency, which is Bitcoin, lowercase b. And this is known as more digital gold. So the one thing I want to mention here is the idea of currency. We're all trying to build wealth here, right? We're trying to stack up, our basically our coins, right? And the idea of currency really as a society is the fact that it all has to have some sort of value. And so these are the characteristics to a useful currency wherever there is out there. And so this is something that's really important because we are now adopting Bitcoin as currency. And if you take a look here, I just made this quick table, but it maps out. Bitcoin, only has a finite amount out there of 21 million, which is why it currently stands at like $35,000 per one Bitcoin. The accessibility, the visibility, every single unit is coded Satoshi, and it can go up to 8 decimals versus, the US currency, any currency, which is 0.2 decimals. And then, there's a couple more reasons why, but, PayPal now has it as a currency you can use. El Salvador has it as legal tender, Japan. And so you're seeing it more and more that it really has value and applicability in everyday life. And so we have to take this seriously. It's also been a wild ride. So the one thing I want to mention here is that, even if you invested in Bitcoin in March of 2020, at the beginning of the pandemic, it was $5,000. And then as of November of last year, it was $69,000, right? That would have been a huge return and life-changing, quite frankly, for so many people, even if they came in, in March 2020. So this is really early, but at the same time, it's been a very wild ride. And so people have lost 50%, 60%, whether they invested in crypto or other cryptocurrencies. And the second thing I want to mention here is that you really have to proceed with caution. This is all very volatile, high risk, but there's a potential for really high return. And so that's what I think is the key here to take away. Ethereum, I don't have to go into the keywords, but essentially it's just another type of blockchain, but with smart contract functionality. All that means is that there's automatic agreements that happen when, there's a buyer and a seller, transactions happen. And so it's faster, it runs with the currency called Ether. I don't have to go into specifics, but here is the top 10 crypto by market cap. right? So everyone talks about Bitcoin all day, every day, but there's over 4,000 cryptocurrencies. There's Bitcoin, Ethereum, Binance, USDC, Solana is the new it girl in the space. And so that's been another really important one. I like Algorand for those out there. But once again, these cryptocurrencies lie on different blockchains. And therefore, you have to really understand the fundamentals of that blockchain, really figure out kind of what makes each one different, because it's harder to stand out by the day, right? This industry moves incredibly fast. And therefore, that's something that you can spend all day doing this type of stuff. So also that's a warning. Like, it's definitely a time suck. There's more than one category. This is from a CB Insights article that happened, or that was written a couple months ago, but it didn't even have like the metaverse in here, which is a big thing that is out there. I don't have to go too much into this either. I know this was only supposed to be 5 minutes, but Tanya, just tell me when to stop. And then I'd say here is, if you want to get into the space, we can talk about the crypto wallet. What are the types? Buying crypto is, a big thing, especially if you want to go through a centralized or decentralized type of exchange. DeFi is a really big thing, where it's over $200 billion, where, you can lend and pay with different types of currencies, and then NFTs, which I'm sure you want to get into at some point. But that's the presentation, because I know it was only supposed to be 5 minutes, so I apologize. But yeah, I'm happy to go into more of these things, or I have slides on what the blockchain is too, if you want to go through that, or anything of that sort.
Yeah.
But
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for the quick overview. And we got over a dozen questions from people that signed up, and a lot of the questions surrounded how to just get started investing. So for someone that's completely new to crypto but has heard about crypto millionaires and NFT millionaires, like, where is a good place for someone to get started? Is maybe the first place to start. And then I know that you went through a lot of different definitions, so maybe we can also just run through some of these definitions one more time. Because like you mentioned, I think that a lot of this is learning almost like a new language in a way, and understanding what the different players are and things like that. So sometimes going through them more than once can be helpful. But yeah, let's start with, like, if someone wants to invest $100 into crypto, where should they get started? How do they know which one is legit and which one's not?
Yeah, I mean, the first way really to interact with any type of kind of crypto platform is really by buying crypto through a centralized exchange, which is Coinbase, Gemini. Those are the two major ones. There's also Binance, which has really, I think it has a $90 billion market cap right now. So it is one of the big players, but they're more kind of international. I think Coinbase and Gemini have a really good hold on the American market. So all you would really do is you would go into Coinbase, sign up, and you would buy Bitcoin, Ethereum, or, by the way, none of this is financial advice. I just want to be very clear. None of this is financial advice. Yeah. But especially with right now with the markets, it's really low, and everyone says buy the dip, right? So buy it when it's cheapest, because if we're really considering this based off of the position as the fact that it's going to be the next it's the next rails of the internet, it's the next, what's going to be the next big thing, then you assume that the price of these currencies are going to continue to go up. So blockchain, Ethereum are the main ones, Solana is another one, Polkadot, Avalanche. I can go and talk about a bunch of cryptocurrencies, but that's really the first major step. I think the next step that I kind of went by really quickly was just creating a crypto wallet. MetaMask is the most common, but what you essentially do, it's a Chrome extension, MetaMask in itself. There's also hardware wallets, but MetaMask is a Chrome extension, and you essentially give it permissions for it to read different types of websites, and then you make an account. It's pretty straightforward. A lot of these things, by the way, require either Google Authenticator or just your SMS, here's your code to log in. So all of these things are pretty, because we're so early, the UX isn't the best, right? And so what's another thing that's very annoying is the fact that you have to get comfortable with things that are very clunky right now because we're starting so fresh. And the other thing that's really also annoying is the fact that MetaMask, works for Ethereum and stuff, but it only has limited capability in terms of what crypto it supports. So if you're new, that's perfectly fine. That's the most popular option, especially if you're just doing Ethereum. But then when you start buying more cryptocurrencies, you actually have to open new wallets. And so that's the other thing too, is that in order to interact with different types of websites, you might have to have a specific wallet. So if I buy Algorand, which is another cryptocurrency, I have to have a my Algo wallet. And then Phantom, Solana, so you might have 10 different wallets. But going back to the basics, you buy crypto through Coinbase, Gemini. You open a wallet, which is generally MetaMask, Phantom, Rainbow. And then after that, I would say is you start learning by doing, right? And so like if you want to buy an NFT, for example, go OpenSea, OpenSea.io, and start browsing for different types of NFTs. It's a whole art to that. Just connecting that site to your wallet, which I think, by the way, is really nice. The one thing I want to stress here too is the fact that you don't have to log into every site anymore in Web3. You can just connect your wallet. So I don't know if you've realized as a Web2 user that like having to remember all of your passwords sucks. Whereas in the future for Web3, you'll be able to just connect your wallet. And I think that's going to be really refreshing. So anyway, Coinbase, Gemini, MetaMask, then start doing by either going on a decentralized exchange or like Uniswap, all that, and or going on OpenSea and talking like buying some NFTs. I think that's kind of the way I would recommend anyone to do it.
Yeah, and just so that for the people that are really new here, what can you just quickly explain the difference between Coinbase and Gemini versus having a wallet?
Yeah,
and
okay.
if you need to, if you actually need to, what is the utility of the wallet is versus, Coinbase and Gemini.
So Coinbase and Gemini are centralized exchanges. What that means is they're kind of a little bit of the middleman where they actually hold different types of cryptocurrencies, and then you give them money for them to give you tokens. So it's interesting because blockchain is all about cutting the middleman, but in order to start even getting into the blockchain, you still have a middleman right now, which is it's kind of crazy. I think that'll change, but they're also, that's kind of where we are right now. We're really early. So in order to just even start playing the game, like in, I don't know, Chuck E. Cheese or something, you have to go somewhere to get the coins and then start playing, right? So that's the analogy there. And then I'd say like the wallet is just how you contain your coins, right? When you're in Chuck E. Cheese, you need to put it somewhere. So your pocket, that's what the wallet is. And so, and MetaMask, and I don't want to get too much in the weeds in that, but MetaMask is one where you own the coin. You have the coins in your wallet. Whereas, and that's called non-custodial. So there's no custodian other than yourself holding it. Whereas if you have a custodial wallet, somebody else holds your coin. Like if you're a child in Chuck E. Cheese and your mom is holding your coins, your mom would be the custodian. You would, and if you hold it, you're non-custodian. So that's kind of how I would think about it.
Yeah, and another common question that came up a lot is how do people think about the risk? So I think that sometimes people may not, invest in crypto or NFTs because of the risk that's involved, especially if maybe you don't have a safety net. And so, definitely recommend for those out there, this is not financial advice. So, and if you do want additional guidance, you can join Snowball. We have a premium, membership where you can chat with the CFP and plan and make sure that you're financially stable. But for those that are ready to maybe start taking a little bit of risk, how should they think about, the risk involved? One of the questions that came through was like, do you have to be a day trader to invest in crypto because it's so volatile? And so I think that like maybe answering some of those questions about like how to think about risk and maybe some common investment strategies that people have.
Yeah. So if you have some, as I mentioned before, crypto is very volatile. It's a bloodbath out there right now, which is both, concerning, but also an opportunity, right? And so that means that cryptocurrencies are cheaper. I would say first is buying and just holding is always one part of a strategy, right? The whole, diversification, right? Always make sure you're doing different things so that when things go up, things go down, right? So one is just, I don't know if you've heard of HODL, but hold on for dear life, HODL. That's one thing that, people are always saying, like, don't sell and don't get scared of it, because if you really believe in the fundamentals of this, that's going to be the future, then it shouldn't matter what a blip in the market has. So that's one thing, right? It's really just holding on to crypto. The second thing I'd say is, there are ways that once you get the crypto from Coinbase or Gemini, you can actually lend that out to a liquidity pool. You can make more passive income that way, because you already have something of value, right? Which means that you can put it into a website where, I don't want to get to the weeds, but you can essentially loan it out to somebody else for them to use, and then you get a return from that. That just is how like money works too, right? Like I can lend it to someone else to my money, and then they just get a return, because it's a store of value, it's currency. And therefore, there are different types of ways you can do that. I could probably drop some in the chat. Voyager is great, 3 to 4%. There's also something called staking, which is a similar concept in the way that like you essentially are lending the currency you have for other people to help mine the currency that you're already in. It gets a little complicated, but all it is once again another way to get income off of the coins that you already have, right? So if you have Solana, I recommend Solflare. Bitcoin and Ethereum is not that much. You won't get much yield off of it. Maybe through Voyager you can, 3 to 4%. Solflare is a good one for if you have Solana. If you have Algorand, for example, TinyMan is another one that it just kind of started as a decentralized exchange, and therefore, like I'm making right now like 180% APY, which is absurd. But these are the types of numbers that you see in crypto, right? Like there are times where you can make so much money just because this is a new liquidity pool. But once again, because it's a new way to make money, it's also much more risky. So I could potentially lose it all, but this should be money that you want to play with.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for that quick overview. And I know we only have 5 minutes. This session went by so quickly, but maybe if we could take a second and just go over some of the basics that people should know, like maybe like the difference between DeFi and Web3, just some of these definitions that maybe people are hearing often, but don't yet know exactly what they mean. Mm-hmm. So maybe starting with like maybe DeFi and Web3, and maybe the differences between like Bitcoin and Ethereum, and maybe some of the other popular ones.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, Web3 is kind of the next iteration of the web as we know it. And Web3 just means that you're able to start owning different types of apps based off of usage, based off of how much you interact with it. I think those are really important. I think decentralized finance is DeFi. There's also CeFi, which is centralized finance. So think about it as a way I told you, right? Like Coinbase and Gemini are centralized exchanges, and the traditional kind of finance model. Centralized finance is that you and I get together in a liquidity pool and we kind of just exchange. Like I got Solana, you got USDC coin, we can trade based off of this pool. Like we put the money in the pool and then we kind of get what we need, right? So that's kind of how that works. And then NFTs is another big one, non-fungible tokens.
Yeah.
Anything like, as I mentioned, there's so much jargon in this that is so unnecessary, but it's meant to keep people out, truly. Like, or it was just meant, or it basically kind of recycles terminology, like even like a ledger. Like who thinks about a ledger nowadays, right? But it's old vocabulary that they're trying to utilize for new things, right? And so non-fungible token, for example, non-fungible just means that it's unique and it can't be changed. And so, anything can be like non-fungible, like my phone could be non-fungible, right? But non-token in particular just means that you can actually, it's recorded on the blockchain and you can actually see it, right? So there is like, there's something called a hash, which is like a digital footprint. And in that hash, you have like the timestamp and when this happened. So like no one can change that because it's time bound, right? In terms of, so that's a non-fungible token. These non-fungible tokens can occur in different types of blockchains, right? And Bitcoin and Ethereum are the two biggest blockchains. Bitcoin came around in 2009. Ethereum came around with a white paper in 2015 and then actually launched in 2013 and then actually launched in 2015. So they're just two different blockchains with two different capabilities. Bitcoin was made with the just more for currency value, and therefore it's called digital gold because there's not much you can do with it once you kind of buy it. And so there's that, right? So you kind of just store it for your own purposes and for the future. Ethereum is very different because what it allows for, and I kind of breezed through this, was the whole fact that you can layer on top of it. So Bitcoin and Ethereum are like layer 1 protocols. Layer 2 just means that it's built on top of another blockchain, and you can create decentralized apps or called dApps, which can be for NFTs, gaming, and the like. And so, I think that's a really exciting capability because then Ethereum will be the underlayer for all these types of websites we see in the future. OpenSea, MetaMask uses it, all of these other components. And so it's just much more versatile as a blockchain.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, and I think one way that someone described it to me in the past was that Bitcoin is digital gold and Ethereum's like digital oil. So you can make things with it. So that was helpful for me to think through it too. Before we head out, like I mentioned, this was meant to be an introductory session on crypto and Web3, meant to spark curiosity. Please continue to do your own research. It's going to take time to start to get familiar with all of these concepts, but hopefully this sparks some curiosity. We'll be posting more on our Instagram, so follow us on Instagram and on our blog. Cheryl, I know you're also part of Web3 Familia. Did you want to share a little bit about that initiative and maybe where people can find you for more information?
Yeah, absolutely. So Web3 Familia kind of is essentially onboarding 1 million Latinos by next year, right? That's their main goal. And it essentially is just crypto curious folks that want to learn from each other and build. And it's really exciting. I think they just created a DAO, so a decentralized autonomous network. All you can really think about is just a group that is registered, and so you're able to it's very community focused, right? And that's the whole point of Web3 as a whole, right? Is that it gives ownership to the everyday person and it's community based. So they just created a DAO, which is really exciting, and that means that in the future there might be some ways for people to invest in projects that come out of Web3 Familia and all of that. So it's really exciting, and so definitely go on their website. I think it's web3familia.com, and you can follow them on Twitter, follow them on Discord, and yeah.
Awesome, I love it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, and and if people have more questions, feel free to message us, and we'll be putting them into a blog post and answering some of them too.
Yeah,
but thank you so much, Cheryl.
Yeah, if you have any questions, guys, I know this is super fast. Don't be deterred by anything I said. Literally, this entire industry is meant for newcomers kind of come and go. But if you really do take some time, Google a lot of things. I've been Googling all the time. So definitely, get into it. It's a rabbit hole. It's the future. And so if you have any questions, feel free to follow me on Twitter at ModelVC. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn, Cheryl Campos. And then if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. So just mention that you met me here on this webinar. But thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Cheryl. Take care, everyone. Good night.
Thanks. Bye.